All right, so we're here with Lawrence Struempf, a Libertarian candidate for U.S. House of Representatives. Welcome, Lawrence.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
I'm Brian Martin. I'm the managing editor here at the Wyoming Tribune Eagle.
Bob Feck, Shine Animal Shelter.
Pleasure to meet you, gentlemen.
Great, glad to have you. Lawrence, first question, what specific issues or concerns have you running for Congress this year?
Well, I've spent most of my life working to serve my community and neighbors and country, and so I want to, try to help. And I figure the only way to do that is to get involved. Some major issues are, of course, the economy. Trying to figure out ways, to increase, growth and, to help the overall economy. Another area is education. I feel that, public education is critical to the future of our country and our state. And so I want to make sure that our school systems and teachers are, the best they can be. Agriculture is very important. If we don't have agriculture, we don't eat. So, I grew up on a ranch up by Riverton, and so I know the difficulties of agricultural life, and believe that it is very important for our country, but also very important for Wyoming. And then another area is technology. So I've worked as a network systems engineer for a number of years down in Denver, and realized that we have to have a strong technological foundation, structure for continued economic growth, and that especially here in Laramie and Cheyenne, Wyoming, will probably be one of the key places for data center growth in the future. And we have to really focus on that.
Lawrence, what qualifications do you bring to the table that will help you serve as a congressperson?
Well, I'm very hardworking and I have a very strong back. I don't like giving up. I'm fairly well educated. I'm working on, hope to defend my dissertation this fall. I've spent almost 20 years, leading in community service, around Laramie and Wyoming. Stuff such as, Kiwanis and Rotary and Chamber of Commerce and United Way, and JCs when I was younger. Even back when I was in high school, FFA, 4-H, and junior high. So anyhow, I've always been active in the community and been an active leader.
Lawrence, can you let us know what you do now?
I'm a college instructor, professor at Laramie County Community College. I've been doing this as going into my 14th year.
And you're at the Laramie campus?
Yes.
What do you believe is the biggest challenge facing the nation? And once you identify that biggest challenge, name one or two others.
I think the biggest challenge is the partisan divide, from the Republicans and the Democrats, and, the two-party system. I think it's critical that, they learn to work together and find a common ground, and that we get a third party so that you don't either have yes or no, you have, in between. And that's, another reason I'm running, because the Libertarian Party is a strong party. We have, with any party, you have some statistical outliers that, may seem extreme. But the general focus of the Libertarian Party, which is just less government, more liberties, less federal government, more state government. So it's not, like getting rid of government and going anarchy. It's just been, working with the Constitution and the government we have to make things better, but trying to minimize the government, in areas where you can.
One or two other big challenges that the nation faces?
Well, right now the energy, issue is big. And so figuring out how we can capitalize on our, since we've become the largest producer, one of the largest producers in the world of, natural energy resources, figuring out how we can market those and capitalize on them, throughout the world.
How important is it for you to maintain your own voice and your priorities when you get to DC? As a third party candidate, obviously you're not coming in beholden to either party, but how do you maintain your own identity and what you think is important once you get in that system?
Well, that's what I've always said. I'm a hard worker, I'm honest, and I have a strong backbone. And so if I need to stand, alone to try to get something done and to let the people know what's happening, then I will. And I'm very determined to, do the best for my state and my country.
Lawrence, I want to cover a variety of issues and just have you kind of touch on each one of them. The first one is military spending,
Yes.
and for us, the importance of protecting F.E. Warren Air Force Base. Where are you at with the current level of military spending?
Well, I understand that it is very high, that we do spend enormous amounts on it. I think we should, try to spend more to protect our soldiers and less on, maybe being the police of the world. I think our Warren Air Force Base is a critical part of our national defense. And so I definitely believe that, that is something we have to protect, as well as, our soldiers, while they're out, making sure they have proper equipment and making sure we take care of them when they get home. But I think we should cut spending on some of our, more extreme programs, and we shouldn't be so quick to launch military forces, around the world, especially in places where they don't want us.
The second issue is climate change and environmental threats. Where do you stand on those issues?
Well, it does appear in some way, whether it's getting warmer or colder, that climate change is occurring. The science and research, all support that it is a real issue. And I really like to, study and know the facts whenever I make a decision or a choice. And science is, probably our best indicator of that. It seems like, and this is where I don't know or understand to what degree we can change it at this point. So we see that, it's gone through a curve and it's on a trajectory. And when we look at the cost for incremental changes, I don't understand the benefit of the cost, benefit, analysis of it. I would have to study that in more depth.
There have been some accusations of Environmental Protection Agency overreach into Wyoming. What are your thoughts about that?
I totally agree with that. I grew up on a ranch in Riverton, and the EPA has declared our ranch as part, control of the reservation. And then so basically the water rights of my family's ranch now essentially are controlled or could be controlled by the reservation. And while, the reservation, I grew up, went to reservation school, have many good friends, a lot of good people there. I mean, I really like the people on the reservation, but I don't think that, they should have control of all the water rights and stuff of that nature. And so I do think that some of those controls should be pushed to the state level rather than the federal level.
Lawrence, talk to us about Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act. What do you think should be done there? Reform or repeal, or is it fine the way it is? And then how do you guarantee healthcare coverage for everyone?
Yeah, well, as I've learned, it's impossible to do everything for everyone. And there will always be some people, no matter how hard you try, who are unhappy. It's impossible to please everyone. And so you have to really try to look and research and study and do what you believe and what, the studies show would be, best for everyone to, some degree. Of course, letting them do their own thing is always usually the best. But if you're going to invest money and efforts in something, it should be the best for the majority. And so with Obamacare, they went through, that's probably the biggest changes that ever happened. I don't think a change that big will probably ever happen again. Okay, so repealing it is, I mean, you'd have to go through the same process or even bigger process to repeal it and replace it, which doesn't seem, very probable, or, I mean, it would be trillions of dollars to, repeal it and replace it. And there are some good aspects of it, no cap on coverage, no pre-existing conditions, things like that. People who are insured really like those things, but there need to be changes made. There are a lot of errors and problems with it. And so we need to work with the medical institutions and with the different states and researchers to figure out what would be best for the economy and the people to make sure that everyone gets the best coverage possible while, being as fiscally conservative as we can, because we don't want to waste a lot of money.
Lawrence, how important is reducing the federal deficit and addressing the federal debt, and what's your solution to that problem?
Well, you got the federal deficit, and then you got the annual deficit. Okay. And so when I'm in Congress, when you look at the whole world, and it's like, you can't change the whole world. You can't work on the whole world. You have to look at one little component and try to fix that and work on that. And so I would look at addressing and trying to create an annual surplus, which then could go to work for the federal deficit. But addressing the deficit as a whole is, it's very large. But the first thing is to get our annual spending and revenue under control. So figure out ways to increase our country and our state's revenue while decreasing our spending on an annual basis.
How do you feel about education reforms, the move away from No Child Left Behind to ESSA, and what more needs to be done?
Well, education is, like I said, is critical. And I understand that in our country, the United States has fallen to, below all the other developed countries in the world as far as our kids, our futures, education levels. And so it would be beneficial to look and see how other countries are doing and see what we need to do to move back up. One option, is to integrate preschool into K through 12 so that our students start a little younger. One idea is, separating children at a younger age into more of a high school environment where they go to the math and the science and the reading that they're test into rather than going through as a group based on age. Of course, making sure that teachers are are well prepared and trained, and we have the best teachers available. But supporting our public education system, that we need to get behind and support, and every dollar we take away from them makes them weaker. And so I think it's much more important to focus on, improving the quality of our public education system than subsidizing private education systems.
So if I could sort of follow just a little bit on that, you just said best teachers available. So there are great teachers. There are great teachers. Every once in a while, there's not. What do you kind of propose?
It is important to make them accountable, but right now, one of the main things we have that we get the best teachers, because they don't make as much. I mean, I'm teaching. I can make a lot more if I went out to industry. I took almost a 40% pay cut when I switched from industry to teaching. But part of the reason we do that is because we know that we have some level of security. And what they've done in Michigan with Scott Walker and what they've tried to do in Wyoming a few years ago is get rid of continuing contract for K through 12. This means that every year they'd have to apply for a job. So you have a contract for 1 year, you don't have a job the next year. You have to reapply. And once that happens, all of the good teachers are going to leave, and you're only going to get the worst teachers. And we need to make sure that doesn't happen, because that would be devastating to our education system, because no one wants to work for, a fraction of the pay they can get elsewhere, and realize that they don't even, have any security in a job the following year.
Lawrence, can you address endangered species issues and specifically the Endangered Species Act and its impact on Wyoming?
Well, I think it is important to have, protection to some degree of animals. But I think it's also important to realize when they're at a recovery state, and the grizzly bears are a good example. I grew up in, Riverton, Fremont County. I used to, when I was young, I'd go up camping for weeks up at Du Bois, and there were grizzly bears, but they didn't really mess with you, and you didn't usually even see them that often. You can't even go up there now. I mean, no one wants to spend a night up there, because those grizzly bears are everywhere, and they know you can't shoot them. And so I think that more of this should be pushed to the state level with people who know and understand the animals within their state. And the fish and game should be allowed to, more easily manage and say, okay, we've got, this many of a species, we're way overpopulated, let's open a controlled hunting season on them or something of that nature. But I know that, Du Bois used to be the best place in the world to go camping and fishing, and it's lost a lot of people because of the fear of the grizzlies.
How do you feel about funding for small airports and the importance of air service in Wyoming? What's the federal government's role in that?
Well, it is critical that we, have air traffic, for our commerce and for our transportation. We need to be able to get, freight and products in and out via trains, planes, semis. And so it is critical to our infrastructure. And of course, with the fears, generated by, potential terrorist attacks and all, air traffic has become one of the more restricted and controlled by the federal government. So it is important for the federal government to have, some oversight of that. But it's also important, for the states to work to develop and make sure that they have quality air traffic providers within the state. And so I do believe it's more up to the state to, work with the providers and the customers to produce, the services within that state or within Wyoming.
What are your feelings about the presidential candidates? And we haven't had a Libertarian to talk about your party's presidential candidate.
Feel very sorry for this country if either Hillary or Trump gets elected. I really don't believe that they have this country's best interest in mind. And I do believe very much that Gary Johnson is the best candidate that we have for U.S. president. Then again, we have a two-party system, and it's not very likely that he will get elected. And, it makes me think of, was it the South Park cartoon where the two aliens took over the Republican and Democratic candidates? And they didn't even worry about the third one, because they knew that, even with Americans knowing that, they had a choice between two aliens or an American who was in a third party, they'd still choose one of the two main parties.
Lawrence, what do you believe are the priorities for Wyoming's lone member of the U.S. House, and how would you make sure that your voice is heard among 435 voices there?
Well, I would actually believe that I would be more valuable to Wyoming and the US House than a Republican or a Democrat, because I always say that, libertarians are very much like Republicans, except for we don't have corporate sponsorship. And so if whoever the House majority is, when they're going to make decisions in the House, it very likely could, my vote could count with them to help pass laws and to make things better. And so being an outsider, I believe, is actually more valuable to our state and our interests.
Lawrence, do you have any other issues that you'd like to talk to us about that we haven't asked you with our questions?
Well, two things I was wanting to really focus on was trying to figure out ways to improve, and grow the economy in Wyoming. Okay, and as we know, over the past, 8-10 years, natural resources have been 60% of our state's revenue, and that's greatly decreased. Of those 60%, the biggest player is natural gas, which was like 60% of that 60%, or about 35 to 40% of our total state revenue. I believe I may be off on that a little bit. And so natural gas is where our real bread and butter comes from. And so with all the studies show that the way that we can make more revenue for our state would be to figure out better ways to market that product. So we've pretty much drilled to capacity. I mean, there's really not much need for drilling for, natural gas or oil, because the market's kind of been saturated with drilling. But now we have all this product that we're extracting. We need to try to get the top dollar for that. So with natural gas, from what I understand, the biggest markets for it, the biggest way to increase our market share is to transport it internationally, and or, for vehicles to start using it. For both of those needs, it has to be liquefied. Okay. And so we would greatly increase our state revenue if we created liquefaction plants for natural gas in the state of Wyoming. And then we could easily export it internationally, and, even start, using it for automotive fuels. So that would be huge. With coal, again, they're showing for the same amount of cost that you'd get like a 10 to 20% increase in energy production by converting coal to liquid. And so we really need to get working on that, because that would increase our return on investment or on our natural resources. Also, we produce a lot of electricity. We have the lowest cost electricity almost in the nation, but we don't tax the production of electricity. We don't tax the transport of electricity. We only tax the utilization of electricity. And I believe most of the electricity we produce in the state is sold out of the state, so we get no tax revenue for our electricity. And then this brings back up when the Verizon mega data center looked, and they spent millions of dollars to find the two best places in the United States to build mega data centers, which would be $20 billion each. And then they build these two for fault tolerance, and then they'd shut down their 40 other data centers, which would save them millions, hundreds of millions of dollars a year. They chose Laramie as one of the #1 places in the nation. They were ready to build, and then something happened with their other site. They had to have two of them, so they canceled the whole thing. But they still want to do that. But getting back to the other point, they chose Laramie because we have like over 90% of our fiber optics are unused, or what we call dark fiber. We have the lowest cost electricity in the nation, or close to it. We have a very cool environment. So with data centers, when you get over 100 degrees, the cost for cooling is almost astronomical. And in Laramie, it's never been over 100 degrees. In Cheyenne, it's usually only like, 5-10 days a year. And so Laramie and Cheyenne are like the most ideal places in the nation for these data centers. Now, if this mega data center had come to Laramie, it would have used more electricity than everything in Albany County put together. It would have doubled the county and the city revenue. Okay, so we need to figure out ways to attract these data centers. Now, another benefit is this data center would have only employed 100 people. I mean, high paid people, 50 to 75,000, but it's only 100 people. So it wouldn't be like our state would be flooded with more people. We just have these nice data centers, which would use a lot of electricity that we're producing here. And then we'd be able to get tax revenue on it rather than sending it across state lines. And that would probably be one of the biggest factors to, affect our economy.
So what could you do in Congress to help facilitate working something like that here?
Well, in Congress, they have several committees that I would like to be on within Congress. The Agriculture Committee, growing up on a ranch, raising cattle and alfalfa hay. All my time in FFA, and I did a lot of leadership in FFA. Technology. As a network systems engineer, I know technology very well. I teach it at the community college. And so I could be on the technology committee. And of course, the education committee, since, I'm a college professor and working on my doctorate, I believe I'd be very beneficial to the education committee within the U.S. Congress. But with technology, the whole future of the United States economy really focuses on technology. These data centers are key to that technology. And so as we're looking as an entire country on how our country is going to move forward and to be profitable, how we're going to reduce costs and improve revenue, these data centers and technology are key to it. And so when you look at the loss of electricity, so when you transport electricity, you lose it through friction. And so if we have to transport electricity 1,000 miles to sell it, we're losing a lot of electricity. Where if we can bring the big users closer, it's more efficient, and we don't lose, that product. And so when we work to develop a grid or an infrastructure for the technology throughout the nation, the U.S. government can work to make initiatives for companies to be more efficient and productive. And of course, they want to. A business wants to make money. So if you show them that, hey, this will save you, $1 million a year, they're going to want to do it regardless. And so really promoting those type of initiatives.
Anything else, Lawrence, do you want to share with us?
Well, I was just going to say, I grew up on a ranch, spent most of my life in Wyoming. I believe I'm an honest and hardworking man like my father was. And I was going to say, I just came up with a quote I think, I like today, which is, you can be really smart, you can have a lot of money, and you can have a lot of, dreams or ambitions. But if you're not going to work hard, get a little dirty, and not give up, you're not going to get it done. You're not going to get the job done. You're not going to achieve it. And so that's why I'm here for. I'm here to work hard and to, not give up.
Well, thanks for being with us today. We appreciate it.
Thank you.